This is Beyond the Bell Tower, where an elite group of North Carolina State University students give us a behind-the-scenes look at their steps to success and show us how they attain even their lofty goals. These students, who are in the top 10% of the country, are active in Student Support Services at NC State, a nationally recognized program designed to provide support for low-income, first-generation college students. Nationally, this population has an 11% graduation rate within 6 years. The Student Support Services students surpass that rate each year and go on to become doctors, dentists, accountants, and engineers. They work at Google, Apple, and the NCAA. They have earned PhDs in Ivy League colleges. These students go well beyond the bell tower to reach this level of success.
I'm Lilly Neal. I'm a TRIO SSS student. I'm majoring in psychology with a minor in social work, and I'm from Pittsburgh, North Carolina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Errico. I am a senior, graduating senior, so leaving this May, double majoring in mechanical and aerospace engineering. I'm originally from Shelby, North Carolina, halfway between Charlotte, Nashville, home of the best barbecue in North Carolina and the annual Liver Mush Festival. And then, I'm the outgoing student body president, so I served for the 2018-2019 academic year, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I love that. Is there anywhere you want to start? It'd be kind of cool, maybe, because I don't think I've heard this story, but like how you went through the college application process. And like, I don't know, when I was going through the process, that's when I figured out what first gen was.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like a similar kind of story for you, or is that something you'd want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. I know it's supposed to be conversational, so we'll go back and forth if you want.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the college application process, for one, is extremely confusing. I think it's confusing for anybody, no matter if you're first gen or not. But it's definitely when I learned what first generation student meant, what it was, and the impact that it could have on your college career. I don't know about you, Lilly, but when I was trying to navigate the FAFSA, first of all, what even is the FAFSA? When I was trying to navigate the FAFSA and figure out where to apply and understanding that you don't apply to each school, there's a common application, but then other schools want you to apply to just them. And then other schools have stuff in addition to the common application. It was just extremely confusing. And I certainly thought, well, if just getting to college is this hard, I can't imagine what college would be like.
Yeah, I absolutely had a similar experience. Like, I remember going through the common application that a lot of schools were using, and I remember getting to the question that was like, are you a first gen, yes or no? And I had no idea what that meant. I had to Google it. I asked my mom. My mom didn't know.
Classic.
It was a whole mess. And then, like you were talking about the FAFSA, that was just a whole nother process. And I thought I had to do all of that on my own, which students are absolutely capable of doing it on their own, but my mom wanted to be involved in that process. And so that further complicated things. And she had different knowledge than I had about the process. And it was just a whole mess of everything.
Yeah, that's for sure. The nice thing is, though, is everything I think is a lot more exciting. Getting to share that with my folks and understanding that I'd be the first in my family to go to college, nevertheless potentially graduate from college. The stats are intimidating on first-gen students, especially first-gen low-income students. My background is from a Tier 1 county, low-income, first-gen, and when you look at the stats for that on graduating, it's pretty scary. So it's exciting to be here. It's exciting to be graduating in May, and I certainly am thankful to NC State for all the resources that it gave. And I know one of the big resources nowadays is the Pack Meal Share program.
Yes.
So talking a little bit about that, I guess, the Pack Meal Share program is super neat because it's something that came about from inside student government. And the really cool thing, I don't know if you know this, Lilly, the really cool thing is that it's students giving other students resources, which I think is pretty neat.
Awesome.
So the thing about the program is it's every semester at the end of the semester, there will be a drive. You'll get an email if you have guest meal swipes on your meal plan. You'll get an email from University Dining asking if you want to donate them. So you can donate all of them. You can donate some of them. Now, it is just guest meal swipes. It's not all your meal swipes. But then those donations go into a pool that students can apply for. And you apply through the Student Ombud Services with Mike Giancola, who, let me just say, is a terrific resource across the board for all things. But Mike Giancola manages the whole process.
I love that. I guess thinking about, and I know a little bit about hunger and homelessness on campus after working with Sarah and Trio and like reading about the survey that came out. Was that what kind of started the process of implementing the meal share program, or was it something that you knew you personally wanted to implement?
Yeah, so I know the study, I think, provided motivation for the university to help those things happen. I know that there had been past efforts to create things like meal share programs or some version of what that may look like, but getting the support can sometimes be difficult. We were lucky to work with some terrific people in university dining and in campus enterprises like Sean and like Randy Late. So we were extremely fortunate to get to work with those people. But I certainly think that the study that came out that showed that 14% of our students are food insecure, have been food insecure in the past, 30 days or whatever the time frame was intimidating and scary and a wake-up call, not just for students, but for the university to help try to get behind some projects that can mitigate it. And Pack Meal Share was the right time, the right place, the right people. And I think that certainly helped. I know the original motivation came, Meredith was my vice president, cared deeply about doing the kind of projects that would have impacts on students in ways that could equip them for the entire breadth of what the student experience is like. So beyond the classroom and beyond the cost of education, but understanding that the cost of education is a lot more than just tuition, a lot more than fees, a lot more than books and school supplies. It's about finding a way to feed yourself, finding a way to have a home, finding a way to do a lot of things while also trying to be a student. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to do. So we wanted to work on ways to make sure students were getting nutritious, culturally appropriate, and enough food. And Pack Meal Share came about through that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question relating to that, and it may be something you know the answer to. It may be something you're not supposed to talk about.
Plenty of those things.
Yeah. But I'm wondering, is there anything administratively or in the background that the university is doing to address the homelessness issue? Because now we've addressed the hunger issue and food insecurity, but are we talking about housing insecurity? Are there conversations happening?
Yeah, I know that they weren't happening to the same degree, or at least I wasn't in the room where they were happening to the same degree as food, but I do know that there's a couple of just resources that exist through the Student Emergency Fund, which is with Mike Giancola, again, where you can request up to $500 in emergency funds if it's kind of a one-off or a one-time or like an emergency, so to speak. But I know that doesn't get the chronic concern of not having a place to stay for a prolonged period of time. And I know that university housing has a couple resources for that. I also know that they're having conversations about, staying open over all the breaks versus just some, so that students who are in housing don't have to try to find a place to stay for the 2.5 weeks were closed for the winter holidays or the winter break. Same thing for spring break. And I know they rolled out the Thanksgiving break coverage this year, which was really well received by students, so that they didn't have to leave, and we don't have to leave what has become our home over the year, and try to find another roof to stay under for a couple days.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I don't know. I think it certainly seems to me that we should be having those conversations. I think that problem perhaps may feel more intimidating to try to figure out ways that you can meet that need and meet students where they are. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I love to hear that, though, that at least conversations are happening, because it's just as big of an issue,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, and this is kind of just bopping around.
That's fine.
When you were talking about coming from a low-income background,
mm-hmm.
Did you work when you first came here? Like, did you?
Oh my gosh, yes, I worked so much. So it's actually interesting. I was staying in Carroll Residence Hall, one of the Tri-Towers. I was originally placed in Wood, and a friend of mine from Shelby was also going to NC State, and so she's like, "Do you want to room with me?" So we did that last minute scramble, and I ended up rooming with her in Carroll, which was awesome. Had a terrific roommate experience, which I know is not common for all. So I'm very thankful for that. But when I was in Carroll, she started walking, over through East Campus, across the road, and into Pullen Park to work at the pool there, lifeguarding. And I ended up, of course, as we all do, needing money and trying to figure out ways to stay in school and still be able to afford life. And so they have a program which is really neat, and it still exists. So if anybody's listening and needs a job, if you can swim reasonably well, not even that well, but reasonably well, they will train you to be a lifeguard and train you on how to swim and train you on first aid, CPR, all of those skills for free if you pledge to work for them. So that's what I did. They have like a program. It's called Save Raleigh Saves, something like that. But it's with the aquatics program. And I went first semester, freshman year, and signed up for the program. Had to skip class to take the classes. The irony here in trying to explain it to my professor, I'll never forget my professor, Psych 101 or Psych 100 or whatever, you were given 5 excused absences and I needed 8 to be able to take the lifeguarding class. And so I went to him and explained that I didn't have money and was struggling to afford school and needed to figure out a way to work and didn't have a job on campus but had this one if I could only take these classes. He was not happy. He was not happy at all. He docked me like 2 points for every class I missed on my final grade. So I made a not great grade in that class, which is okay. But trying to explain that to a professor, it's the only instance I've ever had where somebody wasn't understanding of sometimes, the idea that I need to miss these extra classes to be able to stay in school for the next 4 years. It was interesting. So, but long story short, I'm here. I worked. The pool opened. The lifeguard for the first shift, you had to be there at 4:30 in the morning. So I worked 4:30 to 10 a.m. every day, and then all day Saturday and Sunday for most of my career until I started babysitting, which, yep. So it was a lot. It was a lot of work. Did you work?
Yeah, so I actually still work at a retirement home in Pittsburgh, and I go back and work on the weekends.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's a really great experience, and it's actually let me know what population I don't want to work with.
Has a way of doing that.
Yeah. But so that's how I've funded groceries and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year I was able to work in the psychology undergraduate advising department, and that was really awesome.
Oh, neat.
And then this year I had a stipend with student government, and so that was helpful.
Even though you didn't get it till what, February?
Actually,
March?
I think it was late March that I got it. Yeah. So that was an issue.
The irony.
Yeah. But eventually it helped with buying groceries.
For those of you who are listening, student government pays some of its officials, but Lilly had trouble. They forgot to pay her. So
yeah, that was an issue.
Yeah. Advising. Always stay on top of the things you need done.
Yeah.
That's I think my life motto. Trust but verify. Trust that things are happening the way they should. Trust that everybody's telling the truth. But always verify is the moral of the story. Always verify, because at the end of the day, a lot of times the only person who's gonna get hurt by it is you. So Lilly stayed on top of it and eventually got paid.
Eventually.
But yeah.
And knowing Jess on a personal and professional level now, I've heard her say trust but verify a lot this year. And it's definitely become something that I've tried to live by myself. So I like that you stress that. That's good.
Yeah. The president said that. I hope it wasn't a bad president. I hope I'm not quoting some terrible president. Like president of the United States, not
Right.
NC State. But yeah, so if it's a bad president, sorry.
Sorry.
I'll Google that.
Oh gosh. But so thinking back to how you were talking about how much you were working, I know that you served as Chief Justice,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that you're required to serve on
The conduct board.
Conduct board for 3 years before that?
So when I say, I know I've said that in the past, the reason why you're kind of pseudo required to be on the board for that long is because you have to meet a series of training requirements before you can be eligible to be Chief Justice. And those training requirements historically took 3 years to accomplish because they come with time requirements. So you're a new board member and you can't be a hearing assistant until you've served as an active, well, back up. New board members you get on the board in the fall semester, you have to serve and observe hearings for the spring semester, and then you become an active full board member the following fall semester, after which you have to spend a semester on the board hearing cases before you can be a hearing assistant. So then now you're 2 years in now I'm just a hearing assistant. And then you have to be a hearing assistant for a year, or for a semester, before you can be a presiding officer. And then as a presiding officer, you're now eligible to be Chief Justice. So sometimes if there's not enough people trained, they'll consolidate it down and really work to move people through the different trainings. But historically, it takes about 3 years. Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
It's a lot.
So, and I do want to ask how you got involved in that in the first place. But before that, you were working a ton.
Mm-hmm.
You were enrolled in credit hours and also now in student government and not student government, but on conduct board and doing things like that.
Right.
How are you balancing and how are you managing all that?
Yeah. So the nice thing about the job that I was working is that I was working 4:30 to 10 in the morning, which meant that I was free in the afternoons, free enough beyond, you have to get homework done and go to classes and then go to bed early because you're getting up early. But my afternoons were pseudo free because I wasn't working in the evening, which I think is more traditional. But balancing it was a lot. I also didn't understand what credit hours were when I came to college, so I didn't understand that 18 was a lot. So I took 18 credit hours my first semester and was like, okay, I could have used a warning here. Thank you to no one. But yeah, so 18 credit hours later, at the end of my first semester, I was a little beat. But balancing work was the nice thing about the job I was working and the times I was working is it was 4:30 in the morning as a lifeguard at a huge pool. Which meant, there was 4 other lifeguards there because of the rotation structure. But it's 4:30 in the morning. Not many people are swimming. The only people who are swimming were the older folks, so it's ironic. I also know what group I don't want to work with. So they're there, which only needs 1 lifeguard up. So the other 3 are on break. Well, we call it backup. You never have a break. You're always on backup, always ready to respond to an emergency. But anyways, which meant I got to do my homework at work a lot. So a lot of times I'd start the day off having the homework done that I needed to do that afternoon. So that would mean that my afternoons would become more truly free, and I could spend time with friends, spend time trying to figure out what niche I wanted to explore at NC State, because I certainly experienced a lot of the stereotypical first year at college, homesick and nervous and don't know a lot of people. I knew 2 or 3 people. So yeah, I worked in the morning, was able to do my homework at work a lot, which really, really was truly a great thing. And then would go to class and get my new homework assigned and spend the afternoons either doing work, because I did a lot of work just because I didn't know many people. So I was super ahead first year, which low-key wish I would have kept doing that. But yeah, so I go do work, spend time with some friends or trying to meet new people, and then the conduct board. The conduct board is pretty structured in its time commitment in a way that the rest of student government really isn't. Because I feel like with student government, you just passively at the end of the day are I spent 9 hours doing student government stuff. I have no idea why or didn't intend to do that. It just happened. Whereas with the conduct board, you hear cases Mondays and Thursdays. And so Mondays and Thursdays, you're doing SG stuff. The rest of the time, you're just not. So it was a lot more active structure to the time I was spending doing student government, which meant that it was more easily planned and more easily balanced with the rest of life because it was pretty consistent in what commitment it needed.
That's really nice that it all worked out that way.
Yeah. It's a lot of luck. It just feels very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, though, because you have all these great experiences under your belt now,
Yeah.
and you're about to graduate.
I know.
Just so exciting.
I know. I'm so excited. I take graduation photos next week, so
Yay,
I
that's
know.
exciting.
I know. I don't know if I'm more excited or my parents are more excited, but either way, we're all extremely excited.
Oh, yeah. And then, are you coming back in the fall?
No.
Okay.
So I'm not going to end up doing grad school here. I decided not to. I'm teaching for a year and then law school.
Yay.
So.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
I didn't know about the law school thing. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Nicholas, my husband's in med school at Chapel Hill, so he worked the year so I could be student body president, because I couldn't balance the same way I used to be able to do. Student body president's a lot more time.
Right.
But so he worked the year so that we could eat and have a place to sleep. And so now while he's getting on his feet in med school, I'm going to work for a year. So
That's amazing.
yeah, the trade-off back and forth. So
You mentioned something that kind of triggered something in my mind. You said that student body president was a lot different or more work or something like that. And as someone who's passionate about mental health, and I know you are as well, how did you balance taking care of yourself and then being in that huge leadership role?
Yeah, the nice thing is that I was in it with Meredith, who is the vice president, Meredith Spence-Bolio, who's a fifth-year PhD student who is set to defend in August of this year, so 2019. But anyway, so I was doing it with Meredith, and Meredith is this phenomenal student leader who's extremely good at goal setting, extremely good at time management, extremely detail oriented, and really a balance of a lot of my weaknesses were her strengths, and I think vice versa. So it felt very team oriented in a way that a lot of the other leadership roles aren't, because everybody theoretically is elected or appointed or brought in or participating in student government to do one thing, and that's to better the student experience or support, even if your role is not directly doing that, supporting the health of SG overall. I think it means we're all striving to better what the student experience at NC State is. But we're different branches, we're different groups, we're different, we're all broken off into these different groups doing different things. And so at times it may feel like you're doing it alone. And the executive branch has that unique thing where it's two leaders are elected on one ticket. You run together, you choose each other, and you say, we're going to be the team for the year. So that structure is built in to be very team-oriented. It doesn't always end up functioning that way because in the same way that roommates end up, at the end of the year, you're kind of like, thank goodness we're leaving. We were fortunate to where it wasn't that. It was a friendship grew from what was kind of a professional partnership. And so it grew into being extremely supportive, and a lot of the commitments were more easily balanced because there was two people who were both actively choosing to be giving everything that they had to give to the roles. So it felt very balanced. I will say that, it's a lot of time that you may not even realize you're giving. So whether or not that structured time of meetings and required attendance at things, or not really required, but heavily suggested and would be beneficial for you to be there if you're trying to make things happen. So attendance at events, meetings that you're doing, working on your platform, meetings with administrators, but also meetings with students. Balancing all of that is just active time. But then you have all that mental time when you're done at the end of the day and you're thinking about the things you could have done better, or you're thinking about, you got an email from a student who's really struggling and you're trying to figure out, okay, you've referred them to all these resources, but what else could you be doing? Or there are definitely times where a student would email me because they were struggling with something. You get them connected. They're okay, but it just indicates the larger problems. And now you're like, okay, well, what can I do to make sure other students don't have this happen? What programs? What initiatives? So it's a lot of time. Balancing it's tough. The thing that I did most often to take care of myself beyond, going to counseling, which everybody should go to counseling because counseling's great. Even if you're not needing it, it's also just great. But But beyond counseling, I try to stay connected to my friends, to my group, to be able to shut down on SG side and shut down on the student side for a little while, to spend time with people, spending time, of course, with my husband, things like that.
And your dogs.
And my dogs. I have 2 dogs, both of which I adopted during my year as student body president. So don't make decisions when you're under stress. They're great, but 2 dogs, 2 puppies. It's not 2 dogs. It's that they were both puppies at the same time. So I was potty training 2 dogs at the same time, and it just...
And also governing an entire student body.
Yeah, so
That's
it was... Yeah, the potty training was a struggle, but they are the best dogs ever. So yeah, trying to stay connected. I think there's definitely an opportunity for the university to be supporting its student leaders more. And so I won't pretend to say that at times I felt 100% supported, or I never struggled, because I did pretty much the entire year. There were struggles that looked different or whatnot, but definitely is a lot to balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even in my smaller role as the chair of the Board of Elections, there were times where student government was so much, and it was impacting my mental health so much that I seriously considered taking a step back and not being a part of that organization anymore, just because it was a lot. But at the end of the day, I realized like you said, I am doing this to better either student government or the student body. And so that was kind of what kept me on track and in the organization.
Same.
But I'll be honest and say that there were times where I was overwhelmed, overstressed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think, I certainly thought about resigning from the role often, especially early. I know yours kicked in more later in the year, but early over the summer was a lot of stress for me. And so I certainly thought about it. But the nice thing is that if the people who are supposed to be helping you aren't helping you, or if you're not getting the resources you need where you are, that doesn't mean they're not there,
right?
Which is what I learned. I learned that the resources aren't always where people are telling you that they are. So they might be elsewhere. They might be that, if you have an advisor, an undergraduate advisor or graduate advisor, or, a student org advisor, whatever, and they're supposed to be helping you and they're not, there's other resources. Or the same goes for if you have somebody who's, supposed to be your team member who's not helping as much. There's ways to mitigate it and ways to manage it. So,
right.
Yeah.
You mentioned that early on, so in the summer, right after you were kind of confirmed and everything, that you were thinking about resigning, or the thoughts were crossing your mind. I guess I wonder if some of the imposter syndrome plays into that, or if that's not something you experienced in your leadership roles.
I didn't feel it as much as president. I felt it more with Chief Justice because it was kind of the first one. But then after being Chief Justice for a year, and also with Chief Justice, when you get elected to that role, it's never made sense to me that Chief Justice is elected, because it's not really a platform-oriented position. You kind of go out into the community and you say, I care about academic integrity. I care about, students being safe on campus. And I care about, there not being physical violence on campus. I care about all these things. But when it comes down to it, what you're telling people is that you're going to be fair, that, when you're guiding the board on making decisions about whether or not to suspend a student or not, it's going to be fair, that you're going to get the same, treatment that other students before you've gotten, that it's going to be reasonable, things like that. But every Chief Justice or every person running for Chief Justice is saying that there's not really a platform piece to it. So when I got elected, because of that, I certainly felt a lot of imposter syndrome and kind of wondering how I got there, why I got there. Did students know what they were electing when they elected me? So it was more to play there, but then getting the year to stretch and learn what I could do and be near the student body president, be near the other student leaders really gave me some insight into the role. So I felt prepared and ready when I went into it. And then also right off the bat, Meredith and I started asking questions and asking for things from the university, the first of which was that pack meal share program, and that happened in a week. Yeah. It was super easy, everybody wanted it to happen, which made it so much easier on our end for it to happen. But getting that win early really helped establish and make me feel ready for the role. I will say, though, you're just as likely to get a loss early on. And so it certainly is not indicative of the year to come, per se. But I was fortunate enough to get something and have it go well early on. Yeah. But so that was right when we got in, kind of in April. And then over the summer, the summer is a lot. So.
Yeah. But you got through it.
Yep.
Now
We're
your
all
role's
here.
over.
Yes, I'm done. As of yesterday, I went to the last thing that the outgoing SVP is supposed to go to. So I am scot-free, all done.
Nice.
Yep.
That must feel so good.
It does feel good.
I'm waiting for commencement for my role to be over.
Yep.
Oh, gosh.
Love it.
A lot of the work that y'all have done, especially with the Meal Share program, is relating to advocacy work.
Right.
For oppressed groups or underrepresented groups. So I guess, what does advocacy mean to you, and why was that such a central part of y'all's platform?
Yeah, I remember this is funny. When I was asking Meredith if she wanted to run with me, I Facebook messaged her because I didn't have her phone number. But I Facebook messaged her and said, hi, I'm Jess, because she was in another student government role. So I wanted to pick somebody not who was necessarily my friend, but somebody who I'd seen be an effective advocate. And let me tell you, don't get between Meredith and the grad student population. Meredith is an A1 rock star advocate, especially for grad students, which in her role was about being the grad student liaison and representative. So her only population she was responsible for was grad students, and she did that above and beyond. So I was like, Meredith Spence-Bolio is who I want to run with, and if she says no, then I don't think there's somebody else. So let's hope she says yes. But I Facebook messaged her and said, hi, my name's Jess. I know we know each other, but I just wanted to reach out and see if you're interested in running. Here's my phone number. Feel free to call or text anytime. Let me know what you think. I was super anxious, and so she didn't respond within 5 minutes. So I was like, okay, of course I need to reach out again. So I got her phone number from somebody else. This is really scary. This is not the best behavior. But anyways, got her phone number from somebody, texted her and was like, this is Jess, check Facebook, and I don't know why she said yes to me, because I came off super anxious and like, tell me what you think. So we met up, cup of joe, talked it over. She told me she'd think about it. But when we got there, she asked what was the one thing that, what did I care about? What would a platform be? I said, I don't know. Well, back up. I did say I don't know, but I said, I don't know. I would want that to be something that you and I both cared about. So to me, it would be something that came out of the president and the vice president and what they wanted. But I said, by the end of the day, I know that the central tenet of it for me needs to be advocacy, but it needs to be advocacy in a way that produces results, that isn't just about asking for things in a room, because I think that's important and meaningful, but finding ways to channel that into something that can come out of it that actually makes a difference for students was really important, because there are things that just students can do. So even if we weren't able to get buy-in from administrators, there are definitely ways for students to take that change into their own hands if they're willing to do that. So Meredith thought on it, eventually said yes, which is awesome, because now fast forward, we're all here. But yeah, so that piece of advocacy was there from day one and was important to her and to me. And we weren't sure at the time what that would look like. We built a team of people and asked them, from a variety of backgrounds and a variety of different identities, and asked what was important to people, what had they noticed on campus. Because there's certainly things that we had noticed, but we don't walk with all the identities in the world. And it's hard to understand what those identities can mean for what your experience is. So asking, what ways can the university grow? What ways does it need to stretch? And that produced a lot of really interesting feedback. And so for us, the advocacy piece of it was of course the idea that you're asking for change, you're brainstorming change, you're walking into a meeting with a university administrator saying, here's the problem, but also here's my proposed solution. It may not be the solution that we end up coming to, or the agreement we end up coming to. But if you're bringing a problem, you're also bringing an idea of how to handle it. Because the easier it is for them to say yes, the more likely they are to say yes. So doing that, but then also the thing that I think Meredith and I also held very dear was the idea that we wanted students to know what we were doing, both from an accountability perspective and a transparency perspective, but also from the perspective of there are some things that, we're going to have 25 different meetings over the course of 5 months before it's going to be anything. So that was what our vision of advocacy looked like, was going in, asking for change, brainstorming change on behalf of students. There were definitely times where students brought things and didn't want to be the person in the room. So, doing that, taking that on and doing that. But then also recognizing that the really unique thing about being president and vice president is that you have access to all tiers of the university, from, position, an intro level position just out of grad school, person employed at the university, right on up to the chancellor and the board of trustees. So there were also times where students brought forward concerns and issues and said, we're trying to do our own change, but we're not able to get the meetings that we need. Stepping in and saying, cool, well, we can handle that. We'll take care of the meeting. We'll get that on the books. And just being that open door, being an ally to students, being an accomplice, and being a friend to students was important to us. So I think our definition of advocacy probably changed as we went throughout the year, but I think that's where it is now, is recognizing that you don't always have to be the one doing the advocating, but if you need to be the one supporting, you need to be the one opening doors and helping make connections for people, especially in the role as president and vice president.
I love that.
Yeah, it was a good year.
Yeah.
Good year.
That kind of makes me think, so with Board of Elections, I can't remember which ticket, but one of the tickets came and we were having a conversation and they said, we don't know what to build our platform on because Jess and Meredith did everything.
That's funny.
I thought that was hilarious. But in the back of my head, it was also a little worrisome because I was thinking well, Jess and Meredith did all this advocacy work and really took some huge steps. Mm-hmm. And I want to see that continued throughout the years. And I guess I worry that with the changing sessions, like the new mm-hmm. session, is there programming set in place for the new session to kind of follow along that path and continue that advocacy work? Or is it possible that they could brush it under the rug and do something new? Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think from the perspective of the student or of the people who are leaving the roles, there's certainly a lot of effort to set up a transition that, in talking about the ways in which we were able to succeed on things, what the strengths were, the reason why we thought some things were able to happen. So that hopefully, people who are walking fresh into the role can benefit from somebody having been there for a year, and hopefully not make the same mistakes. And hopefully, if it took us 5 tries to figure out what made this administrator respond positively, then hopefully for them it can be 1 try. I don't know. So sharing that information, certainly. I think with it comes that feeling, though, of the next session always wants to be different. They don't want to be seen as doing the same thing, or I don't know. I think it takes a lot in a person to look at somebody leaving their role and you're going into their role and really listen to the advice they're giving and not view it as, them trying to hold on to power, hold on to it. So we were certainly cognizant of that. We didn't want to come off as trying to force them to do it our way because we're leaving. That's the benefit of an election, and that's, I think, the whole point of an election is that if students don't like what they are having, they can vote in something completely different.
Right.
So yeah, but I think, I'm not worried about that. I think there's a lot of places and there's a lot of people who are allies to student government after this year. And, we benefited from the past administration, establishing partnerships. So I think that's the really great thing about student government is that no matter who's in office or when you leave, theoretically, you've set up and had great partnerships with people on campus, or maybe if you haven't worked with them, you're still viewed as a positive ally when it comes to bettering the student experience. So leaving the next administration with all of these connections and people ready and happy to have a partnership with SG, I think is important. And I think we did that. I know, there's oftentimes there's a lot of change that in student government. I don't know. There's the thing about student government is I think at times it's the way it's built is to be contentious with the university. If the university and student government don't have any disagreements, then student government doesn't need to exist. If the university is doing everything it can or everything students need, then we don't need students advocating for things to be different, because the university's 100% responsive and everything about a student's life is, that's their priority. So if student government and the university are always agreeing, I don't know that student government has a purpose, or maybe not always agreeing, because I think we agree on a lot of things. But if student government and NC State are always asking for the same things and doing the same things, then SG doesn't have a purpose. So what that can look like sometimes is that can look like if the university is a little upset, or if advisors are a little upset, that can look like them trying to change what student government's doing. I know in a year with a lot of really great projects, that's meant pushing a lot of envelopes. It's meant, asking for a lot of things. I think 95% of those things and conversations and pushing of the envelope has been extremely well received. But then you always have a couple folks who don't think it's a good idea and don't want it to happen. So balancing that and making sure that, student government's autonomy is protected and that student government's autonomy is protected, and that the people who are paid to support it and directed to support us are doing so authentically is important. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I know with big change, it can often be the reaction next year is to try to trap it and control it and push it down. And I know that's been like an ongoing trend for like 5 years, is that student government's out of control and doing things. I think this year was a good out of control. It was a professional advocacy based, but we're going to make some changes. But I sure hope that the response isn't to try to stifle that, if that's what the next group wants to do too.
Right.
So
one of those envelope pushers that I can think of, and it may not have even been, I don't think that it was explicitly that people were pushing back, but the election help fund,
mm-hmm.
which I can't believe I didn't think of breaking that up before now, but that was an awesome program that was implemented. But I personally, from my role, I witnessed some implicit or quieter pushback
mm-hmm.
of the envelope being stuffed a little.
Yeah.
But I never heard anything explicit. Do you have any experience with that? Or do you want to talk about the campaign help fund or anything like that?
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good thing to talk about. So one, just a shameless plug. If you want to do SG, but your elections are expensive, trying to figure out, because you're buying signs and buttons and stickers, or if you have a great idea, it's not that, go off. But they can be extremely expensive. So especially for Meredith and I, who both had, I, as first gen, low income, needed to hold on to every penny. I didn't have the money to spend on an election, but wanted the access to the role and wanted to make the change. So long story short, came out of Meredith and I, and through partnership with Lilly and some folks in Senate, a campaign help fund. So now if you want to do it, don't let money hold you back. That's the point, is that you'll get some financial help from student government. Everybody's offered it, so it's not like you're the only person there saying, I'm here. There's nothing that identifies you about it. But all the people running for the student body officers positions now have access to some funds to be able to make sure that money's not a reason students aren't running. But yeah, creating that program, it's the thing that bothered me most about being president was the instances where folks didn't agree with something we were doing. And instead of, coming forward with that and the reasoning behind it so that we can work on a solution and a compromise, sometimes it certainly felt like it was kind of a behind the scenes, let's see how many roadblocks we can throw up without directly throwing anything up so that maybe she won't notice or maybe they won't notice. Or if we can sink the ship before with things behind the scenes, then we're still the good guys. And that's hard to deal with. I think that really is across life, though. And certainly there were times where, and I think this translates to the first gen experience really well, which is why I'm lingering on it, is it certainly sometimes you don't know everything that everybody else knows. You don't know how things work that a lot of other people know, which can mean that you're a little bit easier to take advantage of, or you're not going to pick up on something that should be different because you don't know that it should be different. So that happened in student government a few times. I know the Campaign Help Fund was one of those where it sure felt like, on paper, on the record, in meetings with everybody, it was a great idea. And the university supported, low-income students being able to potentially be the student body president and not have it be a fluke like it was for me. It seemed like it was supported, but then, it's the longer it takes, the longer, there was a lot of roadblocks, a lot of things that pop up. Oh, well, we can't do that anymore. And then asking why is not exactly well received. So, I hate that.
Yeah. I definitely noticed in my role as well that asking why was, I don't know, taboo in a way.
Yeah.
Like, you're just supposed to kind of accept the way things are and then move on. But
smile and nod, say thank you, and don't question anything. Yeah. Don't recommend doing that, but
it's important to ask those follow-up questions and figure things out. And I think you spoke to it really well, like being first gen and not knowing some of that background and not knowing maybe even when to ask, well, why?
Yep.
Like, I experienced that a lot, but towards the end of my role, I kind of realized, like, it's important to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And figure out what's going on and not just smile and nod.
Yeah. Because a lot of times the only person who's going to end up being held responsible is you. And I know you know that, but it's like you're just not the problem. It's, yeah. So asking why, highly recommend, especially the first gen student, because I certainly, not you, but I certainly experienced a lot of times where I didn't know something was supposed to be different. I knew I didn't like what was happening, but I didn't know it was supposed to be different, and that it was different for other students. So there's not really a solution to that other than to make connections with people, find the support groups, find TRIO, find the counseling center, find academic advising, undergrad advising, find all of those things and stay connected and make sure that you're getting what you should be getting. So
even finding like multi-generational peers, like peers who have those backgrounds of family that had higher education, like that became super helpful for me, like finding other members of student government and other senators who were willing to answer those questions or were actually willing to ask questions on my behalf when I maybe was hesitant to do so or felt inhibited. Either because of my role or because of personal barriers that I was experiencing.
Yep, that's for sure.
I can't believe I didn't think about the...
Yeah, I didn't either, because that's a good... the whole point of that was...
Right.
Yeah.
So like low income, yeah.
Yeah.
Try to look over what we chatted about. I wish this was a talk crap about administration podcast.
I was going to say we could do the tell-all.
Right. I could talk some crap right now.
I would love to do a tell-all of this is what you can expect. This is, or even not even a tell-all, like a quote. Like we could just give you quotes from administrators and be like, yep, they said it.
Quote my emails, things like that.
No kidding.
Oh, goodness. It looks like everything that we had kind of wanted to chat about has maybe been touched on. Is there anything that you want to add or anything? Maybe, I know a lot of TRIO students are the ones that listen to these podcasts. So I'm wondering, like, is there anything that you think they they specifically should hear, whether it be about like getting involved or like
Right.
pushing that envelope or anything like that.
I mean, the one thing I've really learned is that I think for the most part, this is going to sound so like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, love the world. But I have learned that for the most part, I think, like, for the most part, most people here want us all to succeed. And I feel very lucky to be able to say that. I think that in the instances where you encounter somebody who maybe it feels like they don't want you to succeed, just move on. Don't waste time. Move on. Find somebody else, because the barrel is large and there's lots of fish. And yeah, so that's the thing that I learned, is that I know I wasted time trying to get out of people. I need help with my advice. Like, my first advisor as a undergrad for academics just wasn't good. I mean, I remember asking, is 18 credit hours too much? Is taking statics and thermo and chem and physics all at the same time a bad idea? Which, yes, it's a bad idea. And just like not having... Nobody was giving that kind of, the things you'll want to think about is with every credit hour, a 3 credit hour class requires 6 credit hours outside of class. Like, nobody ever told me that kind of stuff, which it's not their responsibility to tell me, I guess. But if you're not getting what you need from somebody, move on. Find a new advisor. Go to the support system that's geared towards helping you, like TRIO, Counseling Center, Undergraduate Advising Office, literally people who are paid to do nothing but advise, and it's phenomenal. Even down to like career surveys. I don't know if you've ever done that. I went in because I was like, I have no idea what I want to do, and they really set me up with a lot of things to help me figure it out. So I guess that's my big thing, is just not wasting time on people who aren't giving you what you need. And across the board, I think the university wants us all to succeed. That's what they're here for. If we're not succeeding, then they're not looking good. So when you need something, ask for it. If you want to make a change, if you think a system's set up and it's not doing the best it could be doing, go after it, change it. If you need help doing it, SG's there. If you want to be SG, do it. Go for it. Run in the election. Get appointed. Be the next president. Go off. You do you. And I guess also, alumni. I never thought about that. Alumni. That's a big support system I never even really realized. So I had SG alums, so like past student body presidents who are also first gen, or also low income, or, women, all kinds of different things, who I reached out to at different times in my career to ask for help, and ask for advice on how they handled things. And it was great. So yeah, I'm a resource. I know there's lots of alumni who are resources. The Alumni Association can connect you with those people too. But I encourage it. They've been there. They've gone through it. They've done it. And they made it out in one piece and are now off doing something else. So they might be able to give some good advice.
I kind of am hanging on what you started saying with, like, the university wants us to be successful and the university wants to help us. And I don't think that was apparent to me until probably this semester, as I'm preparing to be an orientation leader for the summer, which is super exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But just having everyone come into our class and talk to us, like from OIED and the Women's Center and just everybody, like I knew all those resources were there, but it's become really explicitly stated to me that the university is putting all these programs in place to help us, and like they do want us to graduate. And even though, like you said earlier, like low-income first-gen students have some pretty scary retention rates, but the university still wants us to graduate and join that alumni association and be a part of the NC State's network. So.
Yeah. No, it wasn't apparent to me either until I got to the SBP role, the student body president role, where you now are meeting all these people and making all these connections. I had no idea some of the resources that were out there. So the one person who does, so if you want to learn it early and aren't an OL and, want to learn it early, Mike Giancola, the Student Ombud Service. He's a confidential, actually confidential in the same ways that the counseling center is confidential, like confidential resource for all students. He's super responsive. A lot of times in the same day, he's already got a meeting on the books for you. Very responsive, manages all the emergency funds and what's called PAC essentials, but also just knows the university. He's been all the way up to the vice chancellor role, so he gets the structure and he gets the resources. So highly recommend if you're listening and you have something and you want to talk about it or you want to figure out a way to be doing something different, just Mike Giancola. He's great.
And he's not a mandatory reporter?
He's not a mandatory reporter. Yeah, I mean, of the same things that, like, if threat to harm,
right.
There's those things, but otherwise, no. Yeah. So
I don't know if that's necessary. I just like to ask.
it's always good to know.
Yeah.
It's always good to know.
Oh,
who
yeah.
is.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Awesome. I think we covered everything really well.
I think so.
You were so awesome. I love you so
You
much.
too. This was good.
This was
Thank
so
you.
fun. Yes.
Yeah, this was fun.
I don't know how Sarah wants us to end. Should I
Yeah,
ask her real quick?
let's. She might have something.
Like last advice. Okay. Yeah. So the last thing would be like to kind of future students, any advice or
Okay.
anything like that.
Okay,
I
we can
think
do that.
just kind of did that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or do you want to? Do you have any?
We can do it for future students really fast.
Oh yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, future students. I guess it would be future first-gen students, most likely. The target audience. Okay.
yeah.
Well, to all the future students out there, first-gen or otherwise, NC State's great. It might not be great for you, so like by all means, find the school that's right for you. But no matter the school, pick yourself first, pick your school second, everything else is next. And know that there are lots of people who want you to succeed that aren't your family. If your family wants that, they aren't your friends. There are people who are paid to help you succeed at the university. So take advantage of it. Do get involved, meet other students. I know Lilly said it earlier, but the multi-generational students who have different experiences and whose families have had different experiences can be extremely helpful and be such a support network. So go for it. Meet people. Study hard. Stay in school. That's all I have. All right. Well,
Thank you so much, Jess. You've been the
you.
best.
Thank you.
TRIO Student Support Services Program and Student Support Services STEM are federally funded college retention and completion programs. These programs focus on academic, personal, and career support for under-resourced undergraduate students. At TRIO SSS and SSS STEM, our goal is helping our students reach their goals. We are currently accepting new students to our program. Apply today. Go to www.ncsu.edu to learn more about student support services at NC State.